Joined right now by Maya Ward, White House reporter for Politico, and Jeff Mason, who covers the White House for Reuters. Welcome to both of you. So, Jeff, how would you describe the president's mood over the last few days? And I'll just say, you were with him. We saw the side of you on Air Force One. I guess that must have been on Friday. So I'm curious if the tariffs and this whole issue, is he the one who is driving the tariff whiplash?
Well, first of all, to your first question, Alex, I think the president's in a very good mood. The reason I'm in this unusual spot right now is this is a pool van. We've got President Trump's golf course right behind us, and that's where the president has spent a good chunk of the day today, where he's also holding meetings. And no doubt some of those meetings are related to trade. He's felt very positive about what's been going on with his policies. We talked on Friday, as you were referencing, to the sort of upheaval in the markets. And he said that he felt that he had solved the problem in the bond market, that he thought the dollar was going to end up going up again after having come down last week because of all of this upheaval. So broadly, I would say the president feels confident and the people around him feel confident, but that confidence is not shared by people in the market. And that is also underscored by the fact that there were some different messages today, including some of what you just played from Secretary Lutnick. I think a lot of folks were expecting that there would be probably a bit of rise tomorrow because of what he said or what the exemptions were for electronics. But the fact that then he brought that back by saying those exemptions aren't going to last long is not going to be loved by investors.
But again, is Donald Trump, Jeff, is he the one driving the whiplash? Because you remember, and we spoke about this many times, for instance, during the first campaign, we would see that the last person with whom he spoke before he would go out on a stage, that was the person who really probably had the greatest influence. And he would go out and speak publicly. And there was a lot of that, like if you get in his ear at the right time, he's listening to you. Are there different messages that he's being advised to consider, or is this all coming from him?
You know what? I think both can be true, Alex. I mean, I wrote a story last week with a colleague about the fact that Secretary Bessent, or Bessent, I keep saying it's a little bit wrong. Secretary Bessent is rising within the trade team, and that's because he came down to Mar-a-Lago last week and encouraged the president to focus more on talking about deal making. And that's what led to a shift this last week about the 90-day pause. That said, you know, you saw in Von Hilliard's clips just now, everyone from the trade team is still playing. Everyone from the trade team is still involved, from Peter Navarro to the Treasury Secretary, and all of those people are in the president's ear. So the final decision is with President Trump, and he's the one who's making it.
And were you, Maya, surprised by what we heard from Howard Lutnick today?
I mean, after what we saw last week, I would say no. I mean, to Jeff's point, yeah, we saw Secretary Bessent. I mean, he had really succeeded, you know, as kind of this leading voice in the White House on tariff strategy, and was in, you know, Trump's ear days before the pause saying he needed to be talking more about negotiations. And now we know he has his work cut out for him. You know, it's going to be this major challenge, actually, working with 75 plus individual countries to try to iron out these tailored deals, all while, you know, the fallout with China continues. And then we see too, there are going to be additional layers to this, and the mixed messaging is going to continue. I mean, Trump has talked about last week that there are still going to be pharmaceutical tariffs. You know, now we have Howard Lutnick saying today on Sunday shows that, yes, there's an exemption for electronics, but things like iPhones and other electronics will still face their own special tariffs in a couple of months. So we're nowhere near the close to the end of this.
What about trade advisor Peter Navarro, Maya, who defended his relationship with Elon Musk during an interview on Meet the Press? Take a listen to this.
So first of all, Elon and I are great. It's not an issue.
Even though he called you a moron and dumber than a sack of bricks?
I've been called worse. Everything's fine with Elon. And look, Elon's doing a very good job with his team.
So let's talk about Lutnick and Jamieson Greer, because last Sunday, the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, was on a different show. He was talking about tariffs, and he was saying that what these are going to do is it's going to bring iPhone manufacturing to the United States. 5 days ago, U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer told senators, quote, "The president has been clear with me and with others that he does not intend to have exclusions and exemptions," unquote, to these tariffs. But now we know about these carve-outs for electronics imported to the U.S. that you talked about at the top, smartphones, computers, chips. It's a contradictory message. I mean, I understand that you're saying that this was the plan, but Lutnick, it seems like nobody told Lutnick and Greer.
No, I disagree with that. I think that absolutely the characterization that I gave you at the top of the hour is the thing that everybody understood all along. But I can see that when you're getting interviewed here, interviewed there, that somehow, like, not having the time like you and I have now, just show the big picture, can make it so that people don't have a complete picture of what's going on.
Well, Greer is in Senate
think
testimony.
About it this way. No, but think about it this way again, that there are these 232s which are coming, that are announced in the Reciprocal Trade Act, and the things that are going to be in the 232s, like the cannonballs that we need so that we can have something to put in the cannon, those things are in progress. And while those are in progress, these, say, 10% on most of the world tariffs will not apply to those things. And so then there's a question, an interpretation, what you say, okay, if you're not applying a semiconductor to those things, then what does that exactly mean? Because the U.S. doesn't really import a whole lot of just semiconductors. The semiconductors are in things. And it's very, very natural for the Commerce Department, and I think the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, is one of the best Commerce secretaries I've ever worked with, that he had his team go through and say, well, what does it mean to comply with this order? And that's what came out. I don't think that it was rushed or disorganized at all.
These exemptions are only for items that will help our Defense Department needs. It's not iPhones in general. It's not semiconductors in general for commercial use.
There's a long list, which you could put a graphic up, of the things that are that we're planning 232 actions on because they're necessary for national security. And those things that are on that long list are things that will be exempt until those 232s happen.
But you understand how some people might look at this and say, this doesn't really make sense in terms of the president's larger goal. If the President Trump and you and your team are all trying to reshore manufacturing so that American manufacturing for phones and computers is happening here in the United States, and along with all these great middle-class jobs that would go with it, that you're exempting those items while at the same time the reshoring and manufacturing of the production of sneakers and T-shirts would happen here, and that seems to be completely the opposite of the goal, right?
That's just a perspective. If you think that we're going to fail to deliver on the 232s, then your question would be one to wonder about. But the 232s will be successful. We've already got 232 steel and aluminum, for example, and so that wouldn't be covered by the reciprocal part. And we've got 232 on autos. That's not covered by the reciprocal part. So those other things are going to happen, and it makes a great deal of sense. So the one final thing I want to say is, going back to, like, why are we doing this in the first place? There's the national security matter, but there's also what it means for the American worker. And so when we look at, say, the small business person who's concerned that the price of their goods is going to be higher when they sell it to their customers, the thing that they also have to remember is that these policies, which the president successfully enacted in the first term, are going to increase the demand for labor, increase wages, up by almost $6,500 in the first 3 years of the Trump administration. And so what it means is that even if you accept the naysayers' perspective on what might happen to the price of a cup of coffee, that the person walking into the coffee shop is going to have a lot more money. In the 15 years after China entered the WTO, real wages went down. So wages went down by more than prices, as we thought these cheap goods were going to revolutionize America. In fact, it was the opposite. Welfare went down. We had Angus Deaton write a whole book about the deaths of despair that were related to this. And so I think we're very optimistic about the fact that people are going to have more money in their pockets and that they're going to have a higher standard of living.
What you're seeing right now, do you think that these tariffs are being carried out in a practical way or a chaotic way?
I think we'll see. So far, very disruptive. So far, very disruptive, right? And so we don't know what the numbers are. But that could be part of a process, right? It depends where we are at the end of the 90 days. Because what was put there is like throwing rocks into the production system. And those impacts would be enormous in terms of the efficiency of the whole world, great cost.
I want to ask you about something that's on a lot of people's minds, your predictions for the future. And I want to start with the R word. I know you think this is just a piece of it. Of course, I'm talking about a recession. Do you think it is likely that the United States will dip into a recession because of President Trump's tariffs?
I think that right now we are at a decision-making point and very close to a recession. And I'm worried about something worse than a recession if this isn't handled well. A recession is 2 negative quarters of GDP, and whether it goes slightly there, we always have those things. We have something that's much more profound. We have a breaking down of the monetary order. We are going to change the monetary order because we cannot spend the amounts of money, so we have that problem. And when we talk about the dollar and we talk about tariffs, we have that. We are having profound changes in our domestic order, how ruling is existing, and we're having profound changes in the world order. Such times are very much like the 1930s. I've studied history, and this repeats over and over again. So if you take tariffs, if you take debt, if you take the rising power challenging the existing power, if you take those factors and look at the factors, those changes in the orders, the systems, are very, very disruptive.
I don't know what's happening. No one knows. You know who knows? Maybe not least of all, but less than some, Donald Trump himself. Some tariffs have been canceled. Some have been partially exempted. Some have been frozen. Some are being brought back. Donald Trump has exempted some in a clear acknowledgement that his plan is causing absolute devastation to the United States economy and to their international relationships. And yet, when asked about that, insists that simultaneously that the exemptions are not happening, but that the exemptions, which again are not happening, are happening, but they're gonna be like temporary. And this is all beyond the tariffs that he put on the other countries and then lowered to 10%. And like, what does that mean? The point is, Trump is seemingly canceling some tariffs, right? At least temporarily. And he's doing so because the economy is going down the toilet again. And he's probably getting calls from his donor class, from rich Republicans or from Republican Congress people saying, you know, my biggest donors here in Michigan, my biggest donors here in Pennsylvania, the capitalist class in this state that gives me my money so that I can be a bum in the seat for you, is saying that your tariffs on microchips or your tariffs on electronics, on phones, on all this stuff from China is going to be devastating to my business or my industry in particular. And I gave money to Republicans so that they would brutalize workers, attack the poor, attack migrants, maybe, steal women's rights. I didn't vote for them to make my life worse. I'm a Republican voter. I do this to harm others, not myself. And so this is all happening. The world fought back. The American economy realized, oh my goodness, the rest of the world exists and has opinions and an agency, and they hit back, and then Trump is backing down, but we don't even know exactly how.